Okay.
Hello, everyone. Thanks for joining us on the opening day of Photo Plus Expo Plus. I am Veronica Cotter. I'm the Western Region Sales Manager for Hahnemuehle, USA, and I'm based in Los Angeles. I am very happy that I was asked to introduce Eric Joseph. There's so much to say about Eric. He graduated from Cal State Northridge in '85 with a BA in art and specializing in photography. Eric is currently the Senior Vice President of New Business and Product Development at Freestyle Photographic in Los Angeles. He joined Freestyle in 1986 and started, like so many of us, in analog. His keen interest in image and process quickly led him to digital. Eric has a thorough understanding and familiarity with digital capture, workflow, processing, and printing. He is a highly regarded member of the photo and imaging industry. Anyone who's had the good fortune of attending Eric's World of Inkjet Paper, the Print Matters seminars, knows how passionate he is about printing and paper choice. I can tell you from firsthand experience, his classes and seminars are exceptionally informative and truly inspiring. With everything else he has going on, he still finds time to teach. Eric is an instructor at the Los Angeles Center of Photography and also teaches classes at the Leica Academy in Los Angeles. Now, before I turn it over to Eric, I just want to mention that at the end of his presentation, we will be doing a drawing for a Hahnemuehle limited edition portfolio box. And for this presentation, we have selected one of Eric's favorite papers, the Photorag Metallic. Each limited edition portfolio box includes 50 sheets of, in this case, the Photorag Metallic, 50 interleaving sheets, 3 certificates of authenticity plus hologram, and white Hahnemuehle gloves. And I want to mention that the Photorag Metallic is a TIPA award-winning paper. So I want to make sure Eric has enough time for his presentation because it is filled with so much useful information. So I'd like to turn it over to my longtime friend, Eric Joseph. Eric?
Wow, I got to live up to all that.
You will. I know
Excellent.
you will. I've been to your presentations.
Well, Veronica and I have known each other, in excess of 30 years. We've grown up in the industry together.
Right.
So, so what I'm going to do here is I'm going to share my screen and start a bit of a keynote presentation that I have created. So, as Veronica said, I do teach and have for the past 10 years a presentation called The World of Inkjet Paper, The Print Matters, where I talk about all brands of paper. I have taken a kind of a personal journey of exploration in really wanting to understand the relationship between image and the specific character and personality of paper. And my full breadth of experience and my approach to digital fine art printmaking comes from, as Veronica said, analog darkroom photography. When I started at Freestyle, which was in 1985, so I've been there, I just had my 34th year anniversary there. We have been in business since 1946. We focus very much on analog photographic materials. We're one of the largest sellers of black and white film paper and chemicals in the world. And about the year 2000, when I think we can all say and agree that digital photography started to become popularized, we as a company did a zig, whereas everybody else in the industry did a zag. We focused on wet darkroom. So, and still today, 75% of what we do is focused on analog photography and keeping those legacy products alive. Well, about 10 years ago, me being a reliable resource of information on On the analog side, people started asking me about digital products and specifically trying to answer the ultimate question of what paper should I use, what printer should I get, and how do I get best results? So a real large chunk of our business now, a lot of my time is spent helping people answer those questions. So the full breadth of products that we supply, and we are a mail order company as well as having a retail store in Hollywood, California, is traditional wet darkroom, black and white film, color film, paper chemicals, but also everything for digital printing. So that includes inkjet paper, ink printers, monitors, monitor calibration devices, custom paper printing profiles, custom printer paper profiling services. And I will cover all of this during the presentation. So here's just a few images of some places I've been. Literally have been, I've counted hundreds of places, colleges, universities, places of photo education, nonprofit photo organizations, galleries, museums, commercial labs, trade shows, events. I have been in a room with 50 beginning photo students, or as you can see, 100 amateur photographers or enthusiasts, or 50 of the top professionals in the world. And they all ask the same questions everywhere I go. The questions are very much the same, even today. The education that the industry has provided for digital fine art printing has been very limited. So here's a little bit of a niche where I and Freestyle have been able to provide good, reliable, solid information to people and help answer those questions and help provide people with the knowledge to be able to understand how to get their ink on paper and make it look amazing. So I always tell people, I know we're not live. It is difficult as a person who is used to standing in front of groups of people, living, breathing people, and being able to respond to body language and facial expression and such. But I always tell people, whenever you're in a room with me, there is no such thing as a dumb question. Like I said earlier, I could be in a room of 50 beginning photo students, 50 of the top professionals in the country. All the questions are the same. So it's a dumb question free zone. This presentation, this workshop is for you. So please ask questions. They're going to go into the chat and then they'll be addressed by Veronica. There's a few other people from Hahnemuehle online as well. And then towards the end, if it's possible, we can have a Q&A session and I will make an effort to answer questions. Also, if there's anything that comes up during the presentation, Veronica will interrupt me from time to time in between slides at an appropriate moment for me to be able to answer specific questions. Take notes. I tend to give a lot of information, a lot of detail. People have said it's like trying to take a sip of water from a fire hydrant. I apologize for that. I am one of those people that if you ask me what time it is, I'll probably tell you how the watch was made. Also, so normally, as Veronica said, I've done this presentation, which covers the full depth and breadth of papers that are on the market from all brands. I have focused this specifically on the Hahnemuehle brand. I've also said that I would never do this via online because it would be like going to a wine tasting and not being able to taste the wine. But here we are. COVID makes us do all sorts of things we wouldn't ordinarily do. Photography is truly a combination of art and science. I say this all the time. The art part is your ability to capture an image that you're so proud of that you want to show it, you want to share it, you want to sell it. And then how do you want to present it? So there's choices that we make aesthetically about our art. The science part of digital is, how to use your camera, all the buttons, all of the concepts that go into using your equipment. On the printing side, it is choosing the right printer, color management, which is how we control the process, And then knowing all the drop-down menus that are in the print drivers and such to make choices there. And, you know, a lot of people will just, they'll get a camera, then to say, I want to print, they'll buy a printer, it has the word pro on it, they plug it in, like, I'm going to be making professional quality prints. Well, it's not that easy. And there's got to be a certain amount of um, knowledge that you need to acquire. And we're here to help you with that. A lot of good information is not out there. So to me, you've gone to classes, you've gone to school, you've learned how to take pictures, you've learned how to compose, you've learned how to use your camera. Same thing as with the printer. You need to learn how to use your printer. Ultimately, in this type of workshop, this type of seminar, want to help answer the question of what paper should I use? The images that I'm going to be showing you are choices that I have specifically made of images printed on the full depth and breadth of Hahnemuehle's a range of papers. So this is an image, pure luck that raven just happened to jump off of there. I love the composition. And I printed it on Hahnemuehle Photorag Pearl, which is a very popular paper, especially for people who have an affinity for a traditional wet darkroom, black and white papers. So you're going to see a lot of variety, and I very much focus on when I'm taking my image, pre-visualizing that image on the paper that I'm going to be using. So I'm going to be talking towards the end about specific papers that I've chosen at the time that I captured the image. So my concept in all of the images that I produce is the photograph as an object. Now, printing in general, I think is very important because it's the only way we can really control what people see. I have run into people all the time that have the most expensive cameras or really expensive cameras, lenses and such. And I say, oh, what are you printing your images on? They're like, well, I don't print. I just put them on Facebook or Instagram. Well, you don't need a $10,000 camera body and a $15,000 lens to be able to post your images on Instagram. It's a waste. To me, printing is a high resolution product. It's much higher resolution than your computer screen. In order to really show off what you do, printing is the way to go. To me, there's 6 steps to perfect prints, and I don't want to dwell on printers and color management and such. I just want to mention it because I have a limited amount of time, and I really do want to focus on paper for the purposes of this presentation. So, but my 6 steps to perfect prints are: number 1, choosing the right monitor for what we do. A lot of people choose Apple monitors, Apple laptops and such. Unfortunately, Apple computers are not designed for photographers. They're designed for streaming video and watching movies. They're P3 color space, which is digital video. I certainly recommend wide gamut monitors, and for that will show 99% Adobe RGB 1998, which is the color space that was developed for digital fine art printmaking. So the brand that we carry and focus on is BenQ, which is a Taiwanese manufactured product. They're a core manufacturer for a lot of the other brands. They represent the best value for the quality on the market, and a great choice. Every single person that's ever gotten one from us has always been very impressed with how much monitor they got for so little money. So definitely recommend BenQ as a brand, and the photographer series. Then monitor calibration. A lot of people talk about that. It is an important part of the process. So to me, yes, the monitor has a certain calibration out of the box for quality control, but for photography, what we do, generally your monitors are set way too bright, which is what causes people to say their images are too dark. So we recommend an X-Rite i1 Display Pro. It's a device that we very much have focused on, that as opposed to less expensive devices or other brands. It's the one that I have personally really worked with and know emphatically that it will provide you with excellent monitor calibration. And when you purchase it from Freestyle, it is accompanied by an exclusive hard copy manual that I have personally written and rewritten and revised so that you are guaranteed to get excellent results on your monitor in terms of calibration. Paper, which is going to be the focus of what we're going to talk about today. Paper to me is the most important choice that you will make as a photographer in terms of representing your image. Printer, choose a printer that matches your lifestyle. We carry both Canon and Epson. Those are two the top brands available now, and they both make excellent printers. I can't tell you with any sort of bias that you can make a better print on an Epson or Canon. They both make beautiful printers that will meet and exceed your expectations. It's just a matter of size, what you want it to do, and comfort level in terms of the programs that are used to print. And we can certainly talk about those things either later on, or if you want to email me questions, by all means. Custom paper printer profiles. To me, this is also very critical. The manufacturers make profiles. A lot of chat about profiles. Manufacturers' generic profiles are in many instances good enough. The reality is they're not made for your specific printer. They're made for to work on the full range of variations of particular printers, and they're also purposefully smaller so that they can cover that range comfortably. Now, when we talk about custom paper profiles, we're making a specific profile on the specific paper you're using on your printer. And it is the single least expensive way, in my opinion, to be able to maximize the quality from your printer, because the generic profiles are like going to Walgreens and getting reader glasses. My custom prescription here is a custom profile for my eyes. It's the difference between how my eyes see and how they're supposed to see according to the standard of 20/20 vision. Same thing happens with your monitor, and same thing happens with paper. So our custom paper profile service is very well known, and it will increase the quality of your printing on your printer on a specific paper. And there's a bit of a procedure to go through, and we can talk about that later as well. The lighting that you view your print under. As you can see on my wall back here, I have 5000K lighting. I've dimmed it down a bit so that it doesn't get blown out, but I have a setting where it's the correct brightness that matches my monitor and the correct color temperature. A lot of people will call me up and say, oh, my prints are dark and yellow. Well, they're looking at them in a dark room with, and their monitor's too bright, and they got a little yellow lamp and a little yellow lampshade. Color temperature, color rendering index, and brightness are key in terms of being able to view your prints in a stable environment where you can evaluate them. Okay, so let's move on to some overall concepts here that I think are very important. My very good friend Cheryl Walsh, who is an underwater portrait photographer, very well known for her mermaids and fairies and fashion and all sorts of beautiful types of series of works that she does. Her and I talk often, and she feels, and I do too, that photographers printing their own work is the most important conversation we need to have in photography today. Very often I go to events, first thing they want to talk about is Canon's new mirrorless camera versus Nikon's new mirrorless camera. You know what? I've been in this industry a long time. A lot of people like to talk about the gear. I feel that photographers suffer from what I call GAS, gear acquisition syndrome. Everybody wants to get the most expensive stuff. They want to get most expensive stuff that they can afford. They think that's what's going to make them a better photographer. The reality is that printing will make you a better photographer. Like I said briefly before, print your image on a piece of paper is a much higher resolution product than a computer screen. On a computer screen, if you're on Facebook or Instagram, you have no control over what people see. Reality is that the image can be too blue, too red, too yellow, too green. It could be too bright, too dark. It could be cropped. It could be a lot of things, depending on what it's being viewed on. Your image on an iPhone is going to look different than somebody's image on an Android phone. It's going to look different on an iPad. It's going to look different on a lot of people's computers because their computer screens aren't calibrated. So you have no control over what people see. When you print your images, you will see things in your images that you never saw on a computer screen. When you print your images big, you'll see things in them that you never saw when they were small. So this is really the conversation, not whose camera's better, whose printer's better. All of the cameras today, all the printers, all the gear is as good as it ever has been. The worst camera today is better than the best camera 5 years ago or 10 years ago. And those cameras were great. So we want to talk about paper. Another concept that I think is a great introduction to the discussion of paper is that, and I'm quoting Mark McCormick here from the Ardenberg Imaging podcast. He's got a really great conversation. I think it's very down to earth about paper and inkjet printing in general, as well as archival permanence. And it's definitely a website that I recommend people go to. He's got 12 podcasts. They're about 12 minutes long, bigger conversation. He broke it down. And there's one on choosing media. And he says inkjet is the great pretender. And I think that's really true. If you think about it, we have papers that are made out of, they're basically glossy luster satin plastic papers. These are papers that are in Hahnemuehle's photo range and introduction to this slide. So when we have those papers that are resin coated papers, they're basically encapsulated. It's generally alpha cellulose encapsulated in a polyethylene or resin coating, and they're designed to look like C prints or chromogenic prints, or if you went to Bay Photo or many of the other labs out there, they call them photo prints. They're plastic papers, and they're designed to mimic that look of a print that you would have gotten if you had taken a roll of film to a mini lab and had it processed. Then we have our Baryta papers like Photorag Baryta, Fine Art Baryta satin, made out of either high-grade alpha cellulose or 100% cotton as a base, semi-gloss surface. They're designed to have the look of a wet darkroom print. They also print beautiful color images, but if you print black and white on them, they very much will look like a wet darkroom print. So the thing is it really isn't. And a lot of people will try to get me into this darkroom versus digital argument. What's better? And to me, it's not really fair. It's like comparing a watercolor to an oil painting. But we do have papers that will look like that, right? Then we have matte papers, smooth matte, textured matte, where we can have images that look like lithographs or etchings, watercolors, and illustrations. And then we have canvas, where we could make images that look like oil paintings. But the reality is that inkjet printing is none of those things. It's a separate technology, and it has its own idiosyncrasies and longevity properties that are not, an oil painting. They're not these other types of printing systems. So I think it's a good conversation and also a good introduction, because we're going to start talking about the various types of papers that Hahnemuehle offers. So Hahnemuehle has a photo line of papers as opposed to their fine art line. These are papers that are designed as an introduction to the Hahnemuehle brand. So we have photoglossy, which is a resin-coated high gloss paper, photoluster, which is if you remember the Kodak papers, there were E, F, and N. So photoglossy would be F, which is stands for ferrotyping. Glossy being defined as a very highly reflective, smooth surface. Luster, also synonymous with pearl, is a paper that has a bit of a slight surface texture, not totally smooth, certainly not as reflective as a glossy paper. That would be like a Kodak E surface. And then there are papers out there that would be a satin or very smooth, uh, even less reflective surface than photoluster, which would be an end surface paper. They also have photomat, fiber, and photomat duo. These are offered as a less expensive alternative to the higher quality fine art, higher quality alpha cellulose, and 100% cotton papers. These are all good for short-term use. They're not designed for archival permanence, but as inexpensive papers, they are a good entry level into the brand. So the Hahnemuehle Photo Luster would be very similar to Epson's ultra premium photo paper luster, which is by far Epson's best-selling paper. But again, resin coated, not designed for archival permanence, definitely not going to give you uh, the high quality results you're going to get off of fine art papers. I just want to touch on nomenclature a bit because it is confusing. People ask me all the time, what do the words glossy, high gloss, gloss, luster, pearl, satin, matte, textured matte, rough matte, what does it all mean? And it is confusing. And even within the Hahnemuehle brand, you see these are two papers that have the word satin in them. But when you actually feel and see those two papers, they're so different. There's the word satin is not there to really describe the surface of the paper. It's a description of maybe the feel of an image on the paper. So on the left here, you see Hahnemuehle Fine Art Baryta Satin. It is an alpha cellulose based paper. I know that because the word fine art in the Hahnemuehle nomenclature, fine art, the two words together, mean that the base is made out of alpha cellulose. Baryta is a clay coating that is on many papers in the Hahnemuehle brand and many others as well. It is short for barium sulfate. I'm going to talk about that next. I don't want to give away too much. And then satin. This is a warm tone paper, very smooth semi-gloss surface. That image with, this is a wall with basically a wall sconce light on it. It's as three-dimensional in real life as it is as you see it on the screen here. I purposefully chose that image for that paper, and I will talk about this a little bit later. On the right-hand side, you see Photorag Satin, and Photorag with a registered trademark denotes that the paper is in fact 100% cotton as opposed to alpha cellulose. And alpha cellulose, there's people ask me all the time, well, I don't like alpha cellulose papers because they don't last as long. Well, Hahnemuehle does a really good job at making an alpha cellulose product that's very high grade that will last a very long time. So I wouldn't be too critical of a choice between an alpha cellulose base and 100% cotton base. To me, it's about the look and feel of the paper. And I'm going to talk about these two images later on as examples of why I chose a specific paper for these images. But it is confusing. And even within a brand like Hahnemuehle, we have two papers that both have the word satin in them, and they couldn't be more different. The Photorag Satin being much more of a matte paper than a semi-gloss paper.
Hey, Eric, there are some questions coming in that I think we can wait a bit for most of them, but this might be a good opportunity. One of the questions is, do you have a preferred size to print?
The size, obviously, well, it really depends on what you're doing, right? So when I have a portfolio, which you see behind me, those images are 11/17. I chose that size because it's perfect for my presentation. I have indicia at the bottom that has the brand and the name of the paper. You can see that, right, Veronica? Oh, you can't see it now because I'm sharing my screen.
No, I can, yeah, I can see
You
your.
can see it in the little thing. Okay. So Plus, the thing is as I'm doing traveling around the country doing presentations, 8.5 by 11 prints don't feel right. They're too small. 13 by 19. I have a portfolio that's got 200 prints. It gets really heavy at 13 by 19. It's heavy enough on 11/17. So I've made a choice here based on what I'm doing, right? So 8.5 by 11 is a great selling product. 13 by 19, I find, is more universal and certainly worldwide. 13 by 19, also known as A3 Plus, is the same size paper all over the world. It also has more of a proportion for printing from a full frame sensor or a digital sensor. So it's very comfortable, but then we sell a lot of 17 by 22 paper. And honestly, most of the printers we sell are the wide format printers, 24-inch and larger. 24-inch rolls are very, very popular. Um, Now, there is a size that isn't currently available for most of the manufacturers, but I do have people buy 17-inch rolls and cut it. 17 by 25 is a perfect proportion for printing from a 35 millimeter negative or full frame sensor and create an even border all the way around the paper, all the way around the image. The problem is it isn't an economical size to print, cut. And if you notice, one of the things I get all the time about size um, is people ask me all the time, look, our sizes used to be 8 by 10, 11 by 14, 16 by 20, 20 by 24. Why are these digital sizes 8.5 by 11, 11, 17, 13, 19, 17, 22? Well, the answer is this stuff wasn't made for photography. It was made for the printing industry. That's where the core of Photoshop and all of this stuff came out of. So you put two 11/17s together, that's an 8.5 by 11. You take two 8.5 by 11s together, it makes it 11/17. You take two 11/17s, put them together, that's 17/22. 13 by 19 is a full bleed double truck magazine size and is universal all over the world. So you're talking about economical cutting patterns and such. So ultimately, the size print is up to you. But I make specific choices based on, how I'm in fact, the purpose of what I'm ultimately doing. So, okay, so Baryta is short for barium sulfate. It's a clay that's been traditionally used in production of black and white darkroom paper. It has a particular odor to it when you open the package. That reminds you of the darkroom, and these are the 5 papers in the Hahnemuehle brand range that contain Baryta, and they're all very different. So when people ask me or tell me that I use Baryta paper, that could be any number of 5 papers in the Hahnemuehle brand right now. Also, it is a very difficult name for people to pronounce. Correct pronunciation is Baryta. This slide also has Baryta, Barita, Baryita, Barda, Bayarda, Baryita, I guess Harry Potter reference. And then, of course, burrito, because people can't remember Baryta. But it is has been a component of black and white darkroom paper for generations. Black and white printing I get asked about a lot. To me, the choices that I make in printing black and white images on inkjet paper are the same I would make for color. It really depends on you. So I have an example of this image on Hahnemuehle Fine Art Baryta, which has got a little bit of a semi-gloss textured surface on a high quality alpha cellulose base. It's a very cool paper. It's a very white paper. And I've simulated the same image here on William Turner, which is a very warm matte paper, very heavily textured, and in the hand feels totally different, and it looks totally different. So this is where, to me, paper choice is critical in black and white. It's important for all types of papers, but especially in black and white, because you're really the base tone of the paper and texture come out more in a black and white image. Hahnemuehle has a beautiful range of smooth matte papers, including Photorag Bright White, Photorag 308, 188. They even have an extra heavyweight paper called 500. Photorag 500, Photorag Ultra Smooth. Rice paper is included in this range as well. All of the papers listed here are 100% cotton, except for the rice paper, which is a alpha cellulose.
And Eric, if I can just, because there is a question specific to the rice paper, someone was asking for something similar to vellum, and I'm just looking for it here. Is there a translucent non-woven paper that is like vellum but large format? I would say it's the rice paper.
That is the closest thing that Hahnemuehle would have. But vellum is a tricky product because it doesn't like to get wet and the coatings are wet. And there are some brands of vellum out there that people are using, but they don't really, the ink doesn't dry evenly on them. And it's a problematic substrate or media, to say the least. So, but there isn't, this would be the closest thing, the rice paper in the Hahnemuehle brand.
Thank you.
Also, the words hot press and cold press asked a lot. Hot press basically means the paper is completely smooth, no surface texture. Cold press means it's textured. And it's when at the end of the process, there's actually a heated metal plate that causes the smooth surface versus a blanket, woven blanket that's applied to the paper to create a texture. And cold press generally has a specific quality to it where the texture is going into the paper. Then we have our textured matte papers. And I've used some of the images on the Hahnemuehle website. They think they've done a good job at kind of capturing some of the textures of these papers. William Turner, certainly a fan favorite. We'll talk about that as that after hours depository after hours depository Dropbox. I would never print that image on anything else. It looks so three-dimensional in real life. It looks as three-dimensional in real life on the screen as it does, on the, it looks as three-dimensional on the screen as it does in real life on a piece of paper. And I've made some very specific choices about these images. There are also, Hahnemuehle is the only manufacturer that provides three papers with a pre-deckled edge. You can get these papers that are cut with smooth edges. And then they also offer William Turner 310, GSM, Photorack 308, museum etching, all with a version. It's a machine deckled edge. It isn't like a handmade. It's as close to a handmade deckled edge as you can get in a mass-produced product. And it is beautiful. It makes for a beautiful presentation. And you would obviously float that in a shadow box frame and light it so that that deckled edge is shown. And then they have Hahnemuehle has a glossy fine art range, which includes all of these papers. The slightly different paper in this range, though, is the Photorack satin, because it does feel like a matte paper. It actually uses matte black ink, but it is in the glossy fine art range, which gets a little confusing, and I like to clarify it because the ink on the surface of the paper has a little bit of a shine to it. OBAs, this is a question I get asked about a lot. OBAs are added to the base or the coating of the paper so that the light will reflect a bluer white. So papers like Hahnemuehle Hot Press Bright White definitely have optical brighteners in them. It is just a point of discussion. To me, it's all about aesthetics. You can see in this illustration where I have a UV LED flashlight, and the paper on top in the above image, which is Hahnemuehle Photorack Bright White. The paper base is reflecting a whiter white, whereas on the other image where the paper does not contain optical brighteners, it does not reflect a bright white. And those papers are generally warmer than bright white papers. How do you know? Well, on the technical specification sheets that are on Hahnemuehle's website, it will tell you what papers have optical brighteners or not. But I can tell you with absolute certainty that if a paper has the word bright in its description, it is definitely contains optical brighteners. GSM is another thing that people ask about all the time. What does it mean? It means grams per square meter. It's the weight of the paper. It is not the thickness of the paper. Thickness of paper is measured in mils or microns, a mil being 1/1000th of an inch, micron being 1/1000th of a millimeter. And the reason why I bring it up is people will come in and ask me, oh, I want to see a selection of 310 GSM thick papers. Well, that's not really the right question. I can show you multiple papers that are 310 GSM, and they will all feel different, especially if they're resin coated papers. There are papers out in the world that are 310 GSM, and they feel markedly thinner than a 100% cotton or alpha cellulose fine art paper because it has to do with the density. So you can't feel GSM. And while it is a description on that comes with every single box of paper, it is not a determining factor to me because they can feel very different. To me, feeling the paper, seeing an image on the paper, seeing your image on the paper is the best way in order to get an understanding of which paper to use. So we're going to talk about some of my favorite papers now. I very much in the Hahnemuehle range anyway. These are all papers that would be considered gallery, museum, exhibition quality. People always use those three words to describe high quality papers. Now, one of the things that I do in my own work is I've always been very focused on the camera and photography's ability to represent three-dimensional reality on a two-dimensional surface and make it seem three-dimensional. So I like people to look at my images and go, wow, that's a choice that I maybe wouldn't have made. And I do make odd choices, but I have very much focused on paper as the core of my conversation. So William Turner, definitely one of my favorites. It's available in two weights, 190 GSM and 310 GSM, 190 being thinner because it's the same paper. We can say it's thinner. You're not going to really see a difference in image quality on the 190 versus the 310, but you might choose the 190 because your printer can't handle feeding a 310 GSM paper. Some of the papers where, the paper's coming down and up, like in the old HP printers, may not actually go through the printer well. So also, if you're trying to control a portfolio, the thickness of it. Now, this image, I knew when I shot it that the texture in the background on the brick and the granite was going to contrast versus the drop box, the actual bronze drop box. This paper has the feel of 80 grit sandpaper. It's very heavily textured. It's very matte. I find that texture is my friend. I will lean towards textured papers when I'm creating images like this. And it just looks so three-dimensional. It's the perfect paper for this image. Hahnemuehle has a natural line of products that they came out with last year. Bamboo has been in the selection for a very long time. They added agave and hemp, and now you're talking about maybe what the paper is made out of and how it meets your lifestyle, how it looks and feels in your hand. Agave of all of these papers is the more textured. It's got a very uneven surface, and I find it quite beautiful. Hemp, a little less textured, also beautiful. And bamboo, which is all of these products are reclaimed or renewable, sustainable. Hemp being one of the papers that been made for thousands of years with hemp. Some of our most famous documents, Constitution and such, have been made on hemp. So if you want a paper to last a long time, and talking with Travis McConaughey, who's the technical guy over at Hahnemuehle, hemp would be the way to go from a paper that's going to last a super long time. Agave being reclaimed agave fibers from tequila and other production that they would make agave from. And bamboo just grows really quickly and really fast. So these are all three absolutely great papers, great addition to the line of Hahnemuehle, and based on the sustainability and recyclability. Photorag satin. This is an image I took in Akone, Japan. This person's cooking eggs in a natural hot spring, and Photorag satin was the perfect paper to render steam, render the colors, the black point, the white point, the texture of the paper. Everything about this paper was perfect to render this image. I would never print it on anything else. And as I said earlier, when I shoot, I very much think about the paper that I'm going to be printing on. So when I shot this, I'm like, I know this is going to look great on Photorag satin. Here's an image I took in the town of Silver City, New Mexico. This is printed on Photorag metallic. This is a very, very unique paper. It doesn't have a white base. It's a 100% cotton base with a proprietary silver metallic coating on it. It doesn't look like a typical resin coated metallic paper. It's definitely a fine art product. It's got a little bit of a texture to it. Everything that comes out of my printer looks like a little Christmas present. The depth and dimension of the color and how it looks at an angle is it's just magical. It's not for everybody. None of these papers are for everybody. People always like to ask me, what's your favorite paper? Well, it depends on the image. This image and all of these images on these papers look amazing. So I don't have a favorite paper, but I have a group of papers that I use regularly.
And Eric, we have about 12 minutes left and we have a few questions. So I'm your timekeeper as well.
Okay, I will track through here real quick then.
Okay.
So museum etching, been around for a very long time. It was developed for and in cooperation with wildlife photographer Stephen Johnson. It's got a little bit of a medium texture. It's very heavy weight. It's 350 GSM. It's got a beautiful color gamut for a matte paper. Matte papers do have less color gamut than papers that use photo black, semi-gloss or luster papers. But it's a gorgeous paper, also available in Decal Edge. Hahnemuehle also has postcard size paper. I created some postcards this morning. If you could see it in the little window, I could when I stop sharing my screen and go bigger later. Make them in two sizes, variety of different papers. Great way to present your images. And like I said, you could do in my my slide here, you can do full bleed, which I just basically put this in 4x6. I set it to full bleed. You could also attach this to another paper and print it out full bleed. This image here, my famous golden pavilion, printed out with a little border. So I think it's a great little addition to people who want to present, especially as you could do a whole series of images and present it actually in the tin. Hahnemuehle has just released this product, which is 50 sheets of paper in a portfolio box. Like Veronica said earlier, raffling off the portfolio with Photorag metallic in it. But they also have bamboo, hemp, and agave. And people always ask me, how do you present your work? Well, people that go to portfolio reviews are going to they're going to use a box like this. It's really beautifully made. It's very durable. It's made out of archival materials, and definitely appropriate if you're going to have a portfolio review. And they are 13x19. There's also a new product, the Signing Pen Duo, which really is not two pens. It's a graphite pencil and a pen. Graphite pencil being used for 100% cotton paper that's matte, right? Because, you can use the pen on semi-gloss paper because you can't really use a pencil on the semi-gloss paper. So that's where the archival pigment pen comes in for signing semi-gloss papers. A lot of people ask me what the standard of the industry is for signing. Do you sign? I definitely don't advise people signing out inside the image area, definitely outside the image area. I encourage people to document their images on the back side of the paper so you don't lose provenance. It's kind of the Wild West, though. It's really up to you in terms of how you actually want to present your images. So a few features about Freestyle real quick here. On our website, we have a World of Inkjet paper comparison chart where it's searchable and sortable, and it lists every brand of paper we have, including Hahnemuehle. So we've gone to the effort of documenting which papers have Baryta, which papers have Baryta and optical brighteners, which papers have optical brighteners. You can sort it by paper weight versus thickness, alphabetical, whatever way you want. This is a really great resource. We've put a lot of time and effort into, and it's evolved over the years. So I encourage you to visit our website and look up our paper rating, our World of Inkjet paper comparison chart. Another feature that we offer in terms of helping people understand what paper's right for them is we offer what we call a remote inkjet paper psychotherapy session. I'm sure you're all laughing right now. Most people do when I say it, but I find it's the best way to be able to answer that question. The process would be you go to our website, you order one. I am then notified by our web order people that you have placed an order for a session. And then I will contact you, arrange for an hour meeting to talk about your history in printing, what your level of expertise is, what types of papers you think you like and don't like. I will take notes, and then I will print your image on up to 8 different papers and send them back to you in the mail, and then have you, I will contact you again for another 1-hour follow-up session to discuss the results that we've sent to you. To me, I can tell you all day long and make recommendations. Other photographers can as well. But seeing your image on 8 different papers, all printed on the same printer with custom profiles, there's no better way to be able to make that decision. Here is a list of resources, links and such. I think you could maybe do a screenshot of this, which has links to our Facebook page, Hahnemuehle's website for more information, remote inkjet paper psychotherapy sessions, et cetera, and for all of the attendees on this webinar. Inkjet 10, if you plug that into our website, you will get 10% off your purchase of inkjet paper only. So this is a great resource page.
And Eric, while they're looking at that, we've got about 4 minutes to do rapid fire questions here. So I'm going to put you on the spot and ask you to kind of
do it.
brief.
And you got a raffle.
Yes. Oh, and the winner is Linda Faye Braun. Yay.
Yay.
So Linda, send me a note so that we can get your shipping information. Okay, Eric. So someone is interested in the custom profiles and can't bring their printer in. How do they? Well,
you don't bring your printer in. What you would do is you would order a profile on our website. You could do a search, their profile. We have a tab where there's directions on how to print out the patches. So we have a standard file that you would print out on your printer under our directions. If you need help, I would personally help you do it. It has to be done a special way without color management. And it has to be done on the specific paper that you want to profile. So it's a little bit of a process, but it's well worth it. So you don't bring your printer in. You actually send us pre-printed patches, and then we scan them in, create the profile, email it to you, and then show you how to use them.
So next question. Someone is asking for a recommendation for a highly detailed vintage image. Sample packs? No, sorry.
Well, it kind of depends on what is the image. You want to reproduce it exactly, right? There's certainly a variety of papers where you can match the quality to it. All of the papers are high resolution. It kind of depends. If it was originally a matte paper, you might want to use PhotoRag 308, or you might, for kind of something that's smoothish, but a little bit of a texture, because those papers were never completely smooth, museum etching would be appropriate. I mean, it really kind of depends on what you're doing. I'd have to see it.
Is there a difference in colors when an image is printed on paper with optical brighteners compared to papers without?
Um, it really has to do more with reflectivity. So your images on a paper with optical brighteners are going to have brighter whites than papers without. And a lot of people get attracted to that. The negative to that, though, to me, is how is it going to look when it's framed? So if you have a paper with optical brighteners in it, you need UV light for those optical brighteners to reflect. So if you're in an area where there's no UV, paper's going to look yellow. You take museum glass, which is designed to block 99% of UV light, put that on a paper with optical brighteners, it's going to make the print look like an image without optical brighteners. So it's a component that I tell people to be careful about, because when I have people that say, oh, I'm printing on Hahnemuehle Photorag Bright White, and then they're putting museum glass on it, they're not really getting the image quality that they intended, right? Now the glazing is kind of taking over from the optical brighteners and making the image yellow, but they didn't really realize it. So just be careful about it. If you can, get a little sample of museum glass, put it on top if you really want to control your process.
Someone asked a question which I answered in the chat, but I think it's certainly worth your input as well. I love matte finish, but some papers are easily glossed or create reflective streaks if touched inadvertently. How can we protect against this? And I mentioned our protective spray, and it doesn't change the texture or surface of the paper. Did I do okay?
Yeah, so the Hahnemuehle UV protective spray is a very popular product. You just put 3 light coats on it, do it outside. It's a varnish type of product. So it does have an odor to it. And spray your prints. That will help protect it from scratches and scuffs, but they are inkjet prints. Be careful with them. They're not going to be impervious. There's a limit in terms of the physics of how the product's made, where if they make it impervious, totally impervious to scratches and scuffs, then ink doesn't absorb into the emulsion or the inkjet receiving layer well. So there's a balance between trying to make the paper resistant to scratches and having it just look beautiful. But yes, the Hahnemuehle UV protective spray is very popular, and it not only helps resist scratches and scuffs, but it's also excellent for archival permanence, because your inkjet paper is designed to absorb ink, but it also absorbs airborne contaminants and such. So I always recommend people to spray their prints.
So according to my computer and my phone, we are now at the 12 o'clock, the 1 hour.
Yes, I can't believe it. We did it in an hour.
We did it. Yay. So thanks again to everybody. I know Eric could go on for a couple hours and still not have enough time. So Eric, again, thank you for a great insight into some of the Hahnemuehle papers. There are always more questions. People can always send us notes. And please stay in touch, and see everybody later. Thanks.
Thank you so much, Hahnemuehle, and thank you so much,
and thanks
Photo
to
Plus
everybody
Expo.
at Emerald for their help in putting all of this together. And hey, keep checking the schedule. We have more to come in November. Thanks, everybody.